do. All right, everybody. Welcome to the September 13th, 2023 meeting of the Southborough Historical Commission, 7:01 p.m. And I'll call the meeting to order, noting that everyone is present. Myself, Kevin Miller, Grant Farrington, Andy Pfaff, Jim Blaschke, and Michelle Hokinson as you appear around the horn on my screen. So first thing is I got is public comment, and I don't expect there is going to be any because there's nobody here except our applicant on the demolition application. But if there is, raise a hand. Going once, going twice, gone. All right. Third item already on the agenda is Annie has gotten some proofs back from, trying to get the historic house signs program up and running again. And we're very close because, Annie, do you want to screen share? Do you have that?
I do, yes.
I'll promote you to panelist, or not panelist, co-host.
Okay.
And then you can screen share and show us these can't, these are the things that are going to be, what are they from Signorama, right? That's, there it is.
All right. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yeah, it looks great.
All right. So thank you, Kevin. So just to give you a little background here. So at our last meeting, we had voted to move forward with getting a, trying a sample sign from a new sign vendor, as we all know that our former vendor sadly passed away. So I've been working with Signorama. We've been going back and forth on a couple of rounds of proofs. And this is what we have landed on at the moment. So before, pulling the trigger and going into production, Kevin and I chatted and we figured it would be good to present this to the commission. So it is a little bit different from what we have currently. So you may notice that there's some small decorative elements that are not shown in this sign that perhaps are on our legacy signs. For example, oh, sorry. Are you seeing a different image now? I hope.
Yes.
So if you can see my cursor, like this little line here, and some little design element, between Southborough Historical. So really how we've landed with Signorama is that, with their production process and their artwork process, it's difficult to get these more, decorative elements that were in our hand painted signs. So, I wanted to talk about that, ask how you guys feel about it. I personally think that this looks really nice. It's clean, it's crisp, and it's easily reproduced, to be more or less exactly the same or very similar every time. I did want to note that we do have some examples, existing currently, that don't have, all of those decorative elements. For example, this one with the Works Bacon House, you'll see it was drawn without that. So this is kind of bringing up, aside from wanting to gain alignment on, the proof that's in front of us, one thing that, I would like to do as we move forward with this sign program is document exactly what, at the finished product for every sign looks like. Have a PDF in our files of, the final artwork. So we have that historical record. We have a spreadsheet that lists out all of the signs, and I think what the text says, but in terms of the design, that's not going to come through unless we have a PDF. So that's kind of what I have to say. Again, just kind of going through some of the examples I found. These were just on the internet. I've seen the one on my house and some of my neighbors, but I certainly have not seen, everything in town. So I welcome feedback from what you guys have to say here.
Wow. Can I start?
Sure.
I, I I don't have a problem with the missing in the two examples you showed. One had a little diamond between Southborough and historical. Another had a little just a dot, like a large oversized period, I guess. Um, I don't miss that. I kind of lament the loss of the little squiggly under the date and before Southborough Historical Commission, but I guess that's, the one thing about it, I just wondered, and I guess the answer to this is no, is that how the hand painted sign looks hand painted? There's there are machine or computer fonts that sort of mimic that. I guess I kind of wondered if Signorama could, in other words, print, let's say in this case, Andrew Sellers' house with that, you know what I mean? In the way that it's a machine made product, but yet it looks,
Yeah, so
I guess
we
the answer is no.
just to address that, I went back and forth with them um kind of at length to find a font that was as similar as possible
Hmm.
to the one we were, currently, and this isn't, necessarily a font. This was someone's, hand
Right.
drawn type. But we worked to find the closest possible
Mhm.
representation, and this is it. It doesn't look hand drawn. I'm trying to zoom in.
Right.
But it has a lot of the same characteristics
Right.
of the letters themselves. And in terms of having something that's, machine produced, this is kind of what we get.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I think in terms of the actual font and the serifs and all that stuff, it looks sensationally like the hand painted one. It's just, it's those very, very minor, one letter slightly shorter, one letter
yeah,
slightly higher, a little bit of a shake in the hand as the paint is going on. Like, and you can tell, but I personally, I really really like this. The only thing and of course, remember folks that this is going to bring in these at a very reasonable cost. And I think also, I actually think it's a plus that they're made out of, they're going to be a PVC or an engineered product, because it's going to last longer. One thing I would just throw in while I have the floor, and then the rest of you have at it, is that I noticed actually on the Hokinson's house that their house doesn't have a the before the name of the house, right? But then in surveying, I forget, Michelle, what the name of your house is, but there's no the. Um,
I have not noticed that.
well, yeah, it's funny. And then I was looking on, I was walking the dog in Ladasquama, and most of the other houses do. And I actually asked Kate Battles, our former vice chair, because they've got one too, and theirs has a the, and most of the ones on Ladasquama has a the. And what apparently it boils down to is the way it's listed in the Macris database.
Oh, okay.
So that was a little quibble I had to figure out so we could be consistent. And it turns out that the legacy signs were always made based on the Macris data, which is why there was some debate actually on the Sellers house. This is the one at what is it, Annie, at 28 East Main. There was some question about the date, and finally we I think some discrepancy between the Patriot Properties database and the Macris, and we always have historically apparently deferred to the Macris report. So I like it. This is the long and the short of it, and I'm very happy. So, Michelle, do you have thoughts on this?
I actually like it a lot, Annie. I like the font, and I like that it doesn't look like it's hand painted, because I mean it's illegible. Not that the other ones were illegible, but it looks very professional. And I never noticed we're missing the. I'll have to look at.
I don't want to give you a complex, right? But Jim, what's your take?
Annie, could you just show the other examples in side by side, just kind of quickly?
I don't know if I can do it side by side.
No, just like flip between them. That's great.
Flip between. Okay, so this is one example, and then this is another example.
Okay. What I was trying to remember was the year of the house construction as formidable as it is in their latest draft, and I guess it is. It really jumps out at you more than the name, but I guess that's how we've been doing it.
The name also sometimes the name is larger. It just so happens that Andrew Sellers is a relatively long name. It has a lot of characters. For example, mine is J. Lowell, which is a lot fewer characters. So space-wise, we could make the name bigger. But in order to fit on the lines as shown, Andrew Sellers just happens to be small in this situation. So sometimes it might be bigger, like Works Bacon showed there.
Yeah, it's nice that they emphasize the name of the home over the word house. The other question is, did you look at any fonts that were actually were maybe a little taller compared to the width that gave more apparent height to the name?
I didn't, but I'm not opposed to that.
Just when I see this, the date jumps out. I'm picturing myself going by down the street. The date's what you're going to see, and the name's going to be a little hard to read. I don't want to iterate, have you go into a lot of iterations, but if it was a way to make the name more readable from a distance by maybe some adjustment in the overall height of the letters, even if they were limited to the width and so on, that's just a thought. Otherwise, it looks great. I'm glad they can do this on a production basis.
Mm-hmm.
Grant, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it looks great. I hadn't actually thought of what Jim had just mentioned there about kind of emphasizing the name of the house over the and house. So maybe that could be an interesting thought. The only other minor thing I picked up on, and I don't know, I'll just be honest, I don't know what our signs or how this compares to what our current signs are. But in looking at this image versus the two others you showed, the 1875 is kind of more over to the right. And so essentially kind of indented, whereas in the other two, example 1 and example 2, it's centered with the C over on the left-hand side. So I don't.
You're right. I didn't even notice that.
So I don't know what we have currently, or what's
Annie,
preferred, but that's just something I noticed.
Wow, Grant, I think that's well spotted.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that change made.
Yeah, I would too.
To get the number, and maybe it would maybe change Jim's view about the relative sizing of, you know what I mean? If the date, in this case 1875, were in fact centered, and you could get that C over a little bit, or less space between the C and the 1.
I think if you move it to the side, it's really apparent that it's not centered. So that's just a design preference. I like it centered. Maybe the C doesn't have to be as large. But
yeah, Annie, I'd go back to them on that one.
I agree, Grant. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
pointing that out. It's that's why we do this process, because I didn't see that, but now that you say it, I can't unsee it.
Happy to help.
Same way. Wow. And I don't know if, to Jim's point, I wouldn't mind. See, can you go back to one of the other two examples, where there you do see that the and the house is actually smaller than Works Bacon. So I wonder if they could do the same thing, for us, like to maybe slightly reduce the and the house, and thus slightly increase Andrew Sellers.
So
Mike,
the challenge here, because as I was kind of trying to explain this before, because Andrew Sellers is relatively long,
Right.
single characters, like we
Right.
can't really make that bigger, without going into like the area with the nail hole. You need some clearance there.
right.
But perhaps we can reconfigure it a little bit, to make that work. I do see what you're saying about making, the relative sizes of the name versus the in-house to be a little bit different proportions.
Yeah,
You
Andy,
know,
what I was suggesting was if for purpose of discussion, the words the and house were an inch high, I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
The design target could be have the name of the house always be, I'm making this up, 1.5 inches. It might
Yeah.
mean you go to elongated letters that are taller than wide, but at least it would give you the emphasis on the name, and the font would, change a little bit from house to house. But if you shot for the 50% larger name on the house, then you kind of have the emphasis no matter what.
No matter
And
what.
make it
Yep.
a little narrower, like
I-
in a movie poster.
I also think by making the word the and house smaller, the name of the house would stand out, even if you did not change the font or the size. I think that would be clearer to say this is Andrew Sellers, and the house would be smaller, so it would appear to be larger.
Exactly.
I think that also might give it a less more machine-made kind of look. I mean, this is all really helpful, and and what the challenge of this is going to be, of course, is that when we were doing this with a human sign painter, all this stuff was left to his discretion and his artistry.
Mhm.
And now, in a way, we have to standardize it, because I can guarantee you that the harried graphic designer at Signorama is not going to want to play around with this. You know what I mean? Every
Yeah.
single time.
Yeah.
So
The more we can, standardize and create a template, the better for sure. And again, just to have the consistency and, for me, the record keeping, I think is critical.
Well, so I just have one other thing about this, but on this whole score, I hate to lose another month, but of course we can't, deliberate outside of here. Are these changes substantial enough that we want another look at this before we sort of go into production on this first one? I think both Jim's point is very well taken, and Grant's catch about the alignment of the date, I think, is actually really significant. So,
My take is that I feel like I understand the direction enough that, I could work the changes directly with the vendor and, get something made. So as you say, we don't lose any more time. I feel like those are relatively minor changes. And if we had to, make a change for the second sign, we can kind of tweak a little bit from there. And who knows, maybe we're not even going to like, the new materials and format and everything. So, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but, I'm kind of thinking, to your point, Kevin, let's not lose any more time, and kind of get this done with the small changes we've discussed.
I actually think that's a very good idea. I'm totally in support. Is that okay with everyone else? We'll take a vote, but just straw poll sound
Yes,
reasonable?
definitely.
Let's give Annie the agency to go ahead and get it done and get this one made. And it'd be lovely to turn it over. It's the Muddlicks. They've been waiting for a while to get this going. So I would love to get it made for them. And of course, we have a couple people in the queue. Should we let's take a vote. I would move that we authorize Annie Pfaff to make the adjustments as discussed to this Andrew Sellers house prototype and to get it made.
I second.
Okay, roll call vote. Jim,
Aye.
Annie,
Yes.
Grant,
Aye.
Michelle,
Yes.
Miller is aye, 5-0. Okay, go to it, Annie. The one last thing I want to comment before we move on from this and get to our hearing is that Does the maker or Signorama, do they supply fasteners?
I don't believe so. So I think it actually says that here. They do the pre-drilled holes,
Right.
but they don't include the nails. So
Right. That's something that I think we should give some thought to, because you know, I think we should give some thought to buying a supply of, let's say, stainless, screws with washers, but something very decorative, because the last thing you want is people just nailing the things up or putting them in with household common screws that are going to rust and make the sign look, but see, that's got some sort of, those are black screws. They look like those screws, I wish I knew the proper name, with a kind of head built into them, like a washer that's built in. I can look into that a little bit, but I think it'd be nice to supply the sign with the fasteners. Now, with the understanding that, sometimes houses have different kinds of siding and they take different, things. But even the two that you showed are attached differently. Those are appear to be black screws, and obviously those are kind of a goldish color. So it would be nice in a way to be able to standardize that, and to have something that will stand up to the weather and not rust or degrade. And in my dream, you'd have recessed screws and then little plugs that would
plugs, right.
Yeah, but that's probably a bridge too far. I don't mind. In fact, I think the other sign looks better though, with the black fasteners, with the black trim. Like, to me, that's very attractive. It becomes, the fasteners themselves become a decorative element. So I'll do a little looking into that, but I did want to clarify whether the fasteners were included. So thank you so much.
Kevin, if you want some help on the fastener front, I'm happy to do it.
Great.
I don't know if you can find, I'll look into it. I don't know if you can find black Sing steel. It's going to be one or the other. Typically, black is typically a black oxide that will rust eventually.
Yeah.
I'll find out.
Can we deputize you on that score?
Yeah.
If you run into, thank you, Jim. Thank you.
And then if I see them, I'll buy 100 of them, and then we'll be all set.
Great. Yeah. Get us through the first 25 signs anyway.
Yeah.
Super. Thank you so much, everybody. So let's move on. And thank you to the Fury's forbearance, because we're now at 7:24, so we're 9 minutes late. So I'm going to promote, first of all, the applicant to a panelist, just so. And let's see if that works out. Yeah, so they can talk and just to review, in case anybody looks in on this or wants to check out the recording later and see what went on. Just to reset, we're talking about this is the public hearing on the demolition application for 36 East Main Street. This application came to us. You've all had a copy. It came in let me just check my dates here. On the 18th of July, it came to my view on the 19th of July. Then on the 27th, which was the 6th of 10 business days that we have to have that initial determination of historical and or architectural significance, we met. We did determine that it was both at that point. And then that sets the clock, as everybody knows, on a 45-day business day cycle that we have to have this hearing. And again, as everybody here knows, we actually had planned to have it a couple of weeks ago, and there was a little bit of a mix-up with the building department in terms of getting the requisite hearing notice. It went to the wrong email, and it was standard issue mix-up. So we had to postpone, and this is now day, 33 of 45, so we're still well within range, but I I thank the applicants for their forbearance with that little bit of a slip up in terms of posting, but it now has been duly posted. I did get the notification. And so here we are. And also I would just note for the record that 4 of us, that would have been myself, Grant, Annie, and Michelle, were very kindly hosted by the applicant a couple days ago. On Monday, they allowed us to walk the property on a site visit, and and those are always no deliberation. That's the kind of rule, and we did chit chat about the weather, I think, and other sundry nonsense, but you can't.
Oh, and the bees, probably the bees. We've been trying to get rid of the
that's
bees,
right.
but we can't even get anybody to come out and take the beehive off. So
Wow, yeah, John did point out warn us about the bees, which we saw. So we had a nice walkthrough. We were at the property about, I don't know, 30 or 40 minutes, and everybody got a good look. And so that was very helpful, and it's much appreciated. And so here we are. And I just first, I think it's probably useful to Kelly and John, the way we normally do this, and I think the way that's useful to do it is, to ask you, if you have anything want to say to start, and then we kind of go around and allow everyone on the commission sort of gets their say so, and we sort of talk it through. We currently have no outside attendees, so we ask for a comment from the public if there is any, and then we'll happily come back to you, and if you want to ask us questions or comment on stuff that we've said or whatever it is, and then eventually we'll get to a vote. Hopefully we won't drag this out too long, but that's basically the idea. So I didn't know if you folks wanted to sort of just tell us where you were at, and talk about the application and what you're looking to do and all that.
I've walked through several contractors, some neighbor friends that are contractors, and the cost is just too much to fix it. There's a lot of things they pointed out that looks like was not permitted. And once you start doing electrical or plumbing, as you know, the whole house has to be done. I'm not really sure where, like, you come in on that front porch, you saw that they put insulation over a porch. I don't think a building inspector allowed that. I don't know how that even occurred. So there's a lot of things that just, the cost is just not beneficial. And our intention is to take it down and to make it, our home next door, and either have one of our children live here, possibly her parents, and if not, we would sell this and move next door.
So you're actually to replace that structure, you're actually looking to build a new house that you would actually move into.
Yes. Yeah.
I see. Right. That's helpful to know. Anything else at the moment? Again, we'll come back to you and make sure you get, we may have questions for you as well as we go around.
okay.
Okay for now?
Yep, we're good for now.
Great. Okay, thank you. And I will say that just to get it out for the record, we did discuss this at the last meeting when I was sort of setting up what this house is. A large factor in our initial determination, and I explained to John when we talked about this, the initial meeting, the initial determination in many cases, as it was in this one, is largely procedural, because the house doesn't have an individual listing in Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System, the so-called MACRIS database that we often rely on very heavily. But it is listed in the East Southborough Center coverage document. And again, what it talks about with this house is that it was built in 1904. That's another one of these circa ones. And it's known as this historically as the Seth Howes house. And it's worth mentioning that this house actually replaced an even earlier house, the so-called Whipple Jennison farmhouse. The Seth Howes, who purchased the property, demolished the Whipple Jennison farmhouse and built the one that we're talking about tonight. It turns out, and this is described at some point in the MACRIS report, he had initially lived at 5 Newton Street, and he was the first Deerfoot clerk, Deerfoot Farms, that is, and then superintendent and later overall manager, and at which point he had the bread to buy this farmstead, rip down the farmhouse, and build the large residence that exists there right now. It is described as the most lavish at the time of the residences in the area, a massive 2-story square, 3-by-2 bay hip-roof colonial revival house with a center entry, wide polygonal bay window on the south side. That would be the East Main frontage. Hip-roof dormer on each slope. I believe one of the dormers has been removed over time. The colonial revival trim includes a box cornice and wide corner pilasters with molded capitals. And that's the extent, in fact, of the description in the historic documentation we have. So it's somewhat limited. There's an interesting, the Deerfoot Farms connection. And actually the MACRIS report that talks about the East Main and the development of that part of town is really very interesting. And a lot of the development that happened around the turn of the 20th century was pursuant to the rise of a kind of professional class, so management types. And that, that's what Mr. Howes, the manager of Deerfoot Creamery, he was a sort of very successful kind of middle management guy who had the dough to, again, buy a farm, tear down the house, and put up what we're here to talk about tonight. So the question, as you know, and Jim was the only person that wasn't able to make the walkthrough. One of the interesting wrinkles, and I think it's fair to say problematic issues for the Furies with this house, is that the front door faces East Main, runs east to west, roughly, almost due east to west. The house sits on the north side of the street. It basically faces south, but the south exposure is the side of the house. It's one side of the house, and the front door faces west. It's near, I believe the house that the Furies currently live in, which is next door, is at the corner of East Main and Overlook. And so the front porch of 36 East Main sort of faces west and kind of faces down toward their backyard, basically. And so it's an odd, through no fault of the applicant, this parcel, over the years, pieces have been sold off and it's been subdivided. And there's a house behind it. There's the Furies house, which is, I guess, is that 38? Sorry.
34.
34. Okay.
Right next to it.
So the numbers go down as you move west. So they're at 34, and it creates the way the house sat, 50 years ago, or even 30, I believe, with an open lot in front of it and a very expansive front yard and facing due west as you're on the front porch, made a lot of sense. I don't think I'm saying anything prejudicial to say that now it's a very odd setup, and that's part of the problem that the applicant is grappling with, that you've got this house that's basically turned 90 degrees from the way it should be. if with the frontage being on East Main. So I think that's at least part of the motivation. Correct me if I'm wrong sorry,
It is part of the motivation with the situation and where it's set and where it, you enter into the house.
yeah, it's
It's-
quite odd.
It is, and when you're sitting in your, the yard next to it all these years and that entranceway, it's just not a very well planned out for that situation where we are located and where the entrance of the main house is, like to go into the front door versus
Right.
the back.
We have a pool in our backyard, so that door faces, it's basically overlooking
Yeah.
our pool.
Right. Yeah, I think people probably saw that. Those of you that
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
there. But all right, thank you. So what I'd like to do is go around and just get what your thought. I mean, I have clear thoughts on this, but I'd like to hear what other people have to say. So we want to start maybe Michelle. You're just in the top left, at least for me.
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to say is that we've lived in town over 30 years before your current house was built. And at that time, you would walk down East Main Street, and it was really quite striking because the front of that house was what you saw as you're walking up East Main Street. So they then carved up the property and put your piece of property. So I feel that there was no planning there. And I don't know who did that, but I was a little bit surprised because you walk in the outside of the house, the clapboards are in really good shape. It looks like it's in good shape. And then when I went inside, I was really surprised at how some of the renovations had happened there. I feel that there's a lot of architectural importance still there, but I feel that even like the dental molding is plastic. I mean, somebody has not really done the house justice. And, one of the things as an old home owner, we try to do restoration. We don't try to do renovation. It looks like it's really been carved up and probably had some poor decisions made over time. And I was just, because you do look at it from the outside, and the outside looks like it's in great shape. But, the bad renovations, like you say, the porch with the installation over it, who knows what else is lying under there. So I understand your situation.
And just this is mainly for Jim's sake, where the house stands currently is that it's a four. If I have this correct, someone get me if I'm wrong here. It's essentially a 4-bedroom house. There's on 2 main living levels. There is a basement that has quite a bit of finish work done in it. It had, I think, John told me it had a jacuzzi room at one point, and there's also a walk-up attic. I believe this again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Furies engaged began demolition. And so, for instance, the kitchen has been removed and all the bathrooms have been removed, fixtures and whatnot. So it's sort of partially gutted. But everything else, bedrooms, living room, is extant. So the flooring was taken up in this weird area where they sort of decked over a deck, and you could see the old ceiling trusses and things that were pulled down. And it's currently kind of a bit of a mess, but
Even the fireplace was removed from the living room. There's no fireplace in that house any longer. I was, very surprised myself with some of the things because, we were, very excited to purchase this house. It's like we said, we knew, but going through it and then all of a sudden doing some demolition and seeing the amount of work and what had been done was very disappointing.
I do have to say, if you had a lot of money,
Yeah, I
house would be
know.
fabulous. I mean, you could
It
just
would be beautiful. I agree, because we brought an architect in who does remodels old homes, and she said that the amount of work that would have to be put into this, you'd have to have just extra money willing to refurbish and redo and remodel. It's just the amount that would need to be put into it to actually repair what has been done. Even going into the family room from that kitchen, where you walk in on the porch, you look at that family room and that molding and the heating boards and the floor and it's, I was thinking there would be so much like a nice living room, but there's so much that needs to be done. You can't even fix that fireplace because the fireplace has been completely removed from that house. And the
Okay.
chimney taken off the roof.
Right. So the fire there, I know there's a fireplace in the living room currently, but you're saying that's non-functional. There's no-
Non-work.
Yeah,
It
so
can't-
when you go up in the attic.
There's no chimney.
There's no chimney.
That,
It's
yeah,
been removed.
So
yeah,
we
now
don't
that
know
you
where
say
it
that,
ends.
right, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can't even,
Yeah. All right, let me go. I'm going back to my group here. Thank you. Annie, do you have thoughts? Annie was present on the walkthrough.
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to thank you guys, John and Kelly, for being here for the hearing, and accommodating our walkthrough let's say last week. That was like a couple days ago. So yeah, I really enjoyed the opportunity to walk around. I live in a historic home myself. I bought a house myself that was in jeopardy of being torn down 6 years ago. So I'm looking at this with a little bit different lens, having gone through the extensive remodel and basically facing exactly what you guys are facing right now. And it is a money pit, and it is it just seems like the work is never ending, and every wall that you open up, it's something new. And so I can certainly appreciate, you guys, your position, just saying it's too much to take on. Because I've been through that myself. I know firsthand what that's like. So I appreciate that, but at the same time, I know that it's possible. Of course, at an expense, but I know that it's possible. During my walkthrough, I was really actually, I appreciate that there's challenges. I saw some knob and tube wiring, definitely, agree that there's probably some unpermitted things going on there, that would take substantive, work to redo. But I saw a lot of potential also. And, that's probably what you guys saw when you bought the property, just the potential. A lot of the elements still do appear to be in good condition. The floor, some of the floors are really lovely. The carpeting, for several years had preserved them. The entryway, while it's, not ideally situated, the stairs are lovely, some of the built-ins in the dining room. So I personally see a lot that's worth saving. So that's my opinion on it. It's your property. And, as a commission, the extent of our power is only to delay. So that's, that's where I would, my vote would be in favor of that. I think it's a lovely house with a lot of potential, although I do understand, the challenges that come with a renovation of this nature.
Yeah, and I would say, Annie, and this is just to get Jim kind of fully up to speed. There's a mix of things in here that are going on. For instance, the siding is in really stellar condition, largely. On the other hand, you've got serious problems with decking and rails and stairs, and unfortunately, all the windows are replacement vinyl, and no disrespect, not particularly good ones. The Furies didn't install them, but they're kind of cheap vinyl windows. It's got some nice flooring, it's wide pine upstairs, and some attractive, the typical kind of built into the dining room. But again, as Annie mentioned, mishmash of, it's got to be rewired. It's got to be replumbed. There's a kind of mess of plumbing that I saw. You know, a lot of fairly significant issues. Although I would say I think that the overriding one, and I'll save most of this for later, is that is the problem of the siting and the orientation of the house, which is, you know, an issue. But Grant, I don't know how you saw it when you were.
Yeah. Well, just wanted to thank you, Kelly and John, for being here today. Great to hear your experience and perspective on the property. So I did attend the walkthrough earlier this week. I have to say, the way I see it, largely I agree with what Annie has said. Obviously, there are many problems with the property. The biggest that I noticed is, you know, the bathroom, kitchen gone, that whole porch kind of covered over area, stripped to the studs, and so there are definitely, you know, entire rooms that are would require significant redoing, shall we say. But there were quite a few you know, architectural elements that Annie had mentioned that I do believe that it warrants going through the demolition delay process. That's just my opinion, and ultimately it's up to you after, if we decide to do that, to if you'd like to continue forward. But I also see a lot of positive elements there that would be great if they could be saved. So that's why I'll be voting the way I will be tonight. But again, appreciate you coming in and sharing.
I just wanted to share that this house was purchased last year. So we have spent a good amount of time trying to make the best of what the situation is once we were starting to do things, because we were not anticipating.
Our intention was to
renovate it. And I was like, this house, I grew up in Southborough. This house has been on East Main Street my whole life. So yeah. I know what this house had and what this house looked like. And the covered porch on the side where the garage used to be was screened in. I remember there being like a screened in porch. I remember that house went for sale. I'm just saying that when I thought it was, when we heard it, when it was going to be sold, we were like, that house is beautiful. I cannot wait. And then I went in there and we started doing some demolition because, you know, things were really old and things were not right. And so as we were taking up, you know, the floors, there were no hardwood floors in that kitchen. I don't know where you know, there was things that more problems than we ever anticipated.
Yeah.
So,
and we own an older home in Brighton that we renovated. It has the same fur floors in the dining room.
And the moldings are absolutely beautiful, gorgeous. The actual, you know,
you could work with that house.
Wainscoting. I mean, you could work with this. This is, I mean, we brought in 3 architects.
And also, like Kelly said, we have owned it almost a year.
We weren't just jumping into it.
If we could have put in for a demo
the day we bought it.
The day we bought it.
Yes, definitely.
We gave a lot of, you know, thought to this.
And we've had a lot of builders over there asking what we can do. I mean, I do agree with you. There is a lot of charm. The issue is that everybody that's come in there at the end of their meetings and going through it,
you know, it's just too much.
It's overwhelming for the whole thing to be.
I don't know if you went up in the 3rd floor attic. I know we did, but they cut the joists, so the whole roof it's dangerous. I don't know why they would cut the joists, but they sisted them all together. I mean, there's a lot of work. It's not just.
We didn't realize there was going to be the extent of this as well.
And that's why we kind of opened up the can of worms just to see what's behind the doors before we, you know, taking our time. But go ahead. Just want to say that.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Just a quick question, if I may. How long was it? Was the property vacant at all, or how long was it since the previous owner until you bought it?
It's over there.
Yeah, he had some tenants over there that were living as neighbors next to us for the last few years, probably over 10 years.
And they left probably a dumpster and
And they-
half of stuff there that we.
And they walked out and we had to
Actually
empty that
covered.
whole house.
Okay. So it was.
I don't know if you did. You go in the
in rough
garage
shape.
also? Like the garage floor is.
Buckled,
I don't know if you
it's
saw the
like,
cement.
it's completely, if you lift up the garage doors, you can't pull a car into that garage. Because the cement you'd have to pour a new foundation for that cement. Or a jackhammer up one side, which is the left side closest to the porch.
Okay. I actually I didn't go inside the garage, so thank you for that. I just went inside the main house, yeah, and around.
Yeah, we weren't inside the garage the other day. I was on the earlier visit with John. So, Jim, do you have
Yeah,
questions?
I wasn't able to make the
That's not
walkthrough.
the.
Oh, wait, hold on, we just lost you.
That's
Sorry.
not the original clapboard. You know that, right? That's been replaced by the owner.
Oh, yeah, that's very clear.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
modern. That's modern clapboard. It's not original. I didn't mean to imply it. I thought it was.
No,
Oh,
I know.
oh, we just didn't know if it was, yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yes,
When I
right.
walked around with several contractors, they pointed out what those guys did. I don't know who he hired to put up that clapboard, but if you really look at it from a builder standpoint, he pointed out a lot of imperfections where they cut corners, and it's not done right either. It looks nice, but if you really look at it, and I could have him come in and show you, there's a lot of stuff that's still
Not matching up.
not right. Go ahead.
Yeah, Johnny Kelly, I wasn't able to make the walkthrough, but well, first a clarifying question. If I remember the site plan that Kevin brought to a meeting or two ago, this house faces the side to the other home you own, correct? Is there a street between them or is it just land? You're muted,
It's
sir.
just land.
Just land.
That's what I recall.
He
All
put
right,
up
so-
the stone wall, that wall between the two properties.
Right, so
That's
quite
right,
often
yeah.
when we think about historical homes, we think about the facade to the street. And being that your entrance is not currently there, if you did something else, would you be turning it to where it faces the street, or what's your intent?
That's the
The
plan.
gentleman across the street, Steve Arena, built like a farmhouse, kept the eyelash window. So we would be looking to,
Keep a similar look, not build this like house that doesn't,
it's not gonna be like the house on Route 30 that's a contemporary house. It's gonna be a nice farmhouse,
or a colonial feel, like
like the house downtown that's being built, that's beautiful.
they
Right,
did a
Right.
very nice job with that,
indeed. And I, as a homeowner for a lot of different houses and have done a lot of restorations, not so much restorations, but improvements. I recognize the cost benefit thoughts that you're going through. No matter how this turns out, whether or not the commission votes to delay or says otherwise, what's your longer term intention? Are you planning to keep the property, or if you were, is there any situation where you would think about selling it to someone who might take it on as a renovation? If you don't mind me asking.
no. We have, the intention was
To
to
say,
remodel it and move over, but, with the situation as it is, and we've been spending a lot of time with people and having plans drawn up and stuff, that we feel like we're in a point where we would need to take it down. And
Kelly's a school teacher.
I'm
in
a school
Northborough,
teacher in Northborough,
So.
been there for a very long time, so, and I grew up in Pinecone Lane.
I own a business in Northborough. And so we're not going anywhere, that's why we want to keep it. And even though we might have paid a little bit too much money for it,
Right,
we thought we could renovate it.
and
But
we'd
then-
be within a range that we could, make
enjoy
some,
it.
enjoy, exactly.
And
Yeah,
now,
are you saying that when you looked at what you wound up paying for it and what it would cost to really renovate it, it would be
Yeah,
more
we,
money than market value. Is that what you're saying? You'd be underwater?
yeah,
It'd be too-
it'd be too much. Like
Yeah.
we thought we were gonna be able to go in there and make a, an estimate of, a rough amount, and then we came in and the amounts that were coming back in, it was just beyond what we expected to do.
Understand. Okay. That's all the questions I had.
I would, one thing I've thought a lot about this, and it's a very, the applicant, the Furies are seeing this kind of play out for the first time, but this is something we go through on a routine basis, and it's always a very difficult determination to make. On the one hand, what we have to worry about, and we have a kind of public charge from the town, to make sure that we don't lose historic assets and we don't lose them casually. I think one of the motivating factors for all of us is the realization that once it's gone, it's gone. And so you don't want to, you can make a mistake, perhaps by delaying, but it's not an irretrievable mistake. If you make the mistake of approving a demolition and then, circumstances change, sometimes you hold the property and the owner changes their mind, or their finances change, or there's some construction cost change, there's some sort of factor that intervenes. We've had cases where people sat out the delay and then did not tear down the house. So it's I think a complicated situation, and most of the time I think we're inclined to err on the side of let's make sure and wait. I will say that for myself, and I came into this conversation entirely willing to be convinced one way or another, and somewhat very open-minded, somewhat indecisive, really. But I have to say, I want to say to the rest of the commission that one of the things that I've thought about a great deal is the fact that through no fault of the applicant, they find themselves, with a house. If you were buying an empty lot to build a house, you would have paid a lot less than what the applicant has paid for this property. And I believe, quite sincerely that they didn't go into this looking to tear this place down. And that really if there's something that was lost vis-a-vis this property, it was lost when the property was initially subdivided, because as soon as the lot, actually the Fury's home occupies, and who could blame them for buying it? It's a lovely house, but once that is done, then the previous owner at 36 East Main had sort of messed it up, because the Fury's present house at 34 isn't going anywhere. And then you've got 36 now sited really oddly, 100 years ago when it was built, and it had this vista and it looked off to the west, and it all made sense. And I think it's worth thinking or talking about the fact that I do have to say, alas, that I think that in a way, the integrity of the house in terms of its siting is irretrievably compromised. I don't think there's any way that house can be picked up and turned 90 degrees. I don't see it. I don't see anybody coming along and wanting to take that house or buy it or move it or preserve it. And, it's funny, recently we've been through this sort of 5 Corderville Road thing, and that house, I have to say, was in far worse condition than this one. But I supported and still support any, effort to save 5 Corderville, because it had site integrity. It was largely unaltered. It looked exactly, in many ways, the way it did when it was built. I think it was in 1920. And also, we have to think about, if we're going to hold the house, is there a reasonable expectation that the house can be saved? And I think that was definitely the case there. To be quite frank, I don't think there is here. I don't think there's, despite the fact that it's in far, far better condition. To me, the compromise that's been in the way the parcel has been chopped up and the way it's now cited, you can't change that. It has been very substantially degraded on the inside over the years through unpermitted work and various choppy kinds of things. And the only reasonable thing you could think was that if a different owner had bought the house and had been delighted to get that much square footage in Southborough for $500,000 or whatever it was, and a couple in their 20s or 30s might have decided to buy that house and live through a decade or 15 years of hard work and misery in order to have access to this town, but I don't think that's the Furies, I think, if we delay, are just probably going to sit it out for 9 months. And I am not a fan of delay for delay's sake. I only personally want to delay if I think there's an opportunity for a different outcome.
And that's what was behind my questions exactly. These folks are dedicated to the property and staying there. 1.2.
Right.
It's not financially able, if they got the house for a song and even if it was an overpriced renovation, they'd still be below market. That's one thing. It's not. So I don't see any upside, frankly, in requiring a delay because the outcome is going to be the same and they'll be sitting on unused property in the meantime. So I'm not in favor of voting for a delay. Right.
So it doesn't, for me, that's me personally, and we may have a split vote here. And by the way, that's fine, the only, I'll just speak, I want to be totally frank. The only other hesitation I have that pushes me in the other direction toward delaying is the fact that and the Furies have indicated that they've had, several different or contractors out to look at the house. I will say that to John and Kelly, that in our experience, it depends on the contractor. You've got some contractors that are very much oriented toward new construction. The developers that have purchased 5 Cordoville that we've been recently involved in, I asked them point blank, would you consider, a historic renovation? And they said to us, no, that's not the kind of work we do. We build new houses, the end, and we're going to wait you out. Okay. Can't do anything about it. But, there are obviously preservation architects that look at the same house. We're going through this with the South Union School now. They did a big study on that building. Some of the people they had walked in and said, you got to tear this school down. And other people came in and said, we're excited about renovating it and we see how it can be done. So I would like to, I hesitate only on that point, but again, my overriding feeling is that, again, through no fault of the applicant, the siting of the house and thus its integrity as a historic structure has been compromised to the point that there's no renovation that's going to change that. Could you move the front entrance to the side that faces East Main? I guess. Are you going to have the same house? Most certainly not. And I'm also influenced, by the way, and then I'll shut up and go back to Annie's got her hand up, is there was a house before this one, and that was torn down too. There's some sense, and this is odd coming from the chair of the Historical Commission, but there is a sense that, communities evolve. And if you're going to plant the flag in the sand to save a historic house, it's got to be, I think there has to be some sense that it can, yes, be reused, and, made livable for contemporary people and have it make kind of sense. And I think if there, when we were talking about the Peters School Annex, we had no jurisdiction over that because of the age of the building, but I was not willing to fight over the Peters School Annex because the real crime was the loss of the Peters High School 50 years before that. And I sort of feel like if there's something to lament here, it's probably the original subdivision of the parcel. And, those are economic pressures. And anyway, that's where I'm at. Annie, you've got the other side.
Yeah, so I actually just had a question for the applicant. So I understand you've talked to several architects, several contractors. Has anyone given you concrete numbers? And would you be comfortable sharing those numbers with us? And the reason why I ask is, so I work professionally as a real estate agent. So a lot of what I do with my clients every day is, help them evaluate homes and, what potential improvements might cost and, whether those improvements would, as I said, make it underwater. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is I understand that, the numbers are higher than you want to spend, but is it more than what the value could be? If you did make that investment, could you get your money back? Or if someone else made that investment, could they, have a good home for the value? So again, understanding it's more than you want to pay for sure. But do you have numbers that you're comfortable sharing with us?
We had between 500 and 800,000, but that was also adding a addition. We wanted to go over that kitchen.
Secure that kitchen.
We wanted to, add on a garage, maybe add on a room behind the garage. So we wanted to change the house, but also keep it
The main
somehow,
house.
and somehow get an entrance that faces East Main.
Mhm.
But it was very challenging.
Mhm.
And the pricing is just, it's just.
Those numbers don't surprise me. When I walked through, I was like, oh, at least 500, maybe 6 or 7. Again, having done this to my own home, relatively recently, I mean, the construction costs have come up. But, it's a big house and, I'm just thinking there might be someone who's willing to do it. At that price, at that cost, and have a large centrally located home in Southborough at the end. So that's where I'm coming from with my perspective.
And I'll just note that I think that's really one of the benefits of the delay process, is that it allows us time, or perhaps you as well, but also the commission and others in town, to think of maybe solutions that they hadn't thought of previously. So I'm thinking of, as Kevin had mentioned earlier, the 5 Courteville house, in which the applicant wanted to tear down a pretty small 1920s bungalow and put a larger 2,000 or 3,000 square foot single family home. And we delayed the demolition of the house and got quite, I would say, deep into negotiations about converting it to affordable housing or some sort of town-owned property that the town could use for, municipal space or convert to affordable housing. So, and in that case, that would involve, an investment from the town, which could make it easier on the homeowner. So that's just an example of ways that the demolition process, you can work during the process to see if there's any solution that could be both beneficial to you as well as to the town more generally in preserving the building. So that I would just note that is strong part of my reasoning, that perhaps there's something that we're not thinking of tonight that could result in saving this home and perhaps resulting in a good outcome for you as well.
We got coming up on 1 year of owning the home.
Yes.
I don't know when did they apply for that demolition permit right away? For 5 Courteville, you're saying? Like, how quickly did they apply for that?
I am not sure. I think the previous owner had died, and it was the
Yeah, it was the estate that was
estate. So I'm not sure exactly how.
a different situation, and maybe I shouldn't have brought up the comparison, but it's I think again for me, there's an evaluation person, and I'm speaking to the commission here. Really, there's an evaluation that I'm making about what I see as a possible outcome, and if I don't see the outcome, I'm reluctant personally to delay, because I think the applicant has had a year to think about this, and has done diligence, and it clearly began gutting the house with an eye toward doing renovations. They wouldn't have spent the time gutting kitchens and bathrooms, a pain in the neck of a process, if they weren't intending to renovate, and then discovering that. And at the end of the day, again, I go back to the site issue, because I think at the end of the day, if you renovate to the point where you have a symmetrical entrance on the East Main Street side of the house, it's not the same house anymore. And if you don't do that, you have this rather bizarrely sited, structure. No matter what you do to it, you pour a lot of money into it and still have this sort of weird structure. So this is a really tough one. I think this personally, since I've been on the commission, this is the most difficult one that I've had to think about. Because I do, again, when we have the report and you say there's a historic connection here, the house is well remembered, like someone like Michelle, who, and I guess Kelly, who knew the house way before 34 East Main existed. It hurts a little more, maybe, I think, than maybe it does for me. But I'm having a hard time, and it may be, by the way, Kelly and John, that if the commission votes to delay tonight for very principled reasons, that doesn't mean we have to hold you to the full 9 months. We are empowered, perhaps in conversation with you, or for the developments or other things that you bring forward from an architect or a developer, to revisit the matter and release you at the next meeting. That is, there's sort of 3 outcomes that can happen here tonight. One is we say, go and live long and prosper and do what you want to the place right now. B, we vote to delay, and it could take the full 9 months. Or C, we vote to delay, and then subsequent thinking or something that you bring forward causes us to release the house early. So I mentioned that just to remind my fellow commission members also that those are the sort of 3 potential outcomes here. Michelle, do you want to have a sort of last word from the commission before we?
Yes, just so I have three points, and one of the things that bothers you, Kevin, does not really bother me as much as that's the side entrance. When they bought the house, that was a known, so I don't see how that really is of any point here, except for it would be nice to have a nice, beautiful entrance that you could see from the street. One thing is, and I sympathize with the applicant, is the amount of money that they would have to put in. Obviously, they weren't thinking that it was going to be that expensive. But my third point is the fact that forever is a long time. So I think that I'm very torn about this, because I can see, the Fiore side of this, but I also feel that, could it be saved within a reasonable without a reasonable financial impact? I don't know the answer to that. So if you bought the house for $500,000 and you sunk 6, 7, 800,000. So you're talking about 1.3 million. And I don't know what the value of the house would be at that point. So I think all good points have been brought up here, but for me, the one reservation that I have is forever.
That was one of the reasons we
We
bought
bought
the
it,
house, is
right.
because of the door facing our pool.
Yeah.
We
We
did.
said, we'll
We'll
fix
make-
that and we'll
Put it-
add on, and
Do a little, you know,
it's a bigger lot, it's a better lot, it's a flat lot, it's beautiful.
it is. And when we walked inside and then realized what had taken place, this is not the house that Eleanor Burke owned when I grew up in this town. And, you know, she was in that house when I was, you know, so I think about that. That's not the house that's there. It has been changed. It's, you know, extensively. So a lot of that character that used to be there that we love, and he has family from Winchester with beautiful homes that have been renovated. Absolutely beautiful. That you can't do the same thing to that house. It needs to be, that crown molding doesn't even match in every room. The family room is one.
Taking out that crown molding. Now you're gonna have to start taking out walls because that's all horse glass. And we knew that going in.
We knew
but
that, but I thought it would be a little bit more cohesive. I thought there might be a little bit more, but then we took the kitchen and removed all that area and started taking it, and things were not coming together like they should have. We had a kitchen plan from Starlight Kitchen in Worcester to remodel that kitchen. And then when the contractors came in and took that out, and you had to do so much more, and then they saw the floor underneath and the foundation and
What's underneath
what's
that
coming
porch?
underneath the porch. It was disappointing.
The galvanized pipe going into PVC, the contractor pointed out, it's not
Yeah,
code.
it's not,
Everything is not code.
Did you guys do any sort of inspection or due diligence before you purchased the home?
No,
well, no,
no,
that was not, you know,
that was not in
that was not in the,
the agreement. And we knew there was gonna be some things,
but
but
we didn't know it was gonna be because,
you can't see that stuff unless you're gonna be ripping apart walls.
Right, there's so much underneath walls and
and
floors.
floorboards, you wouldn't think that the kitchen floor would not be level with
Right.
with the living room floor. It's a step down. It doesn't even like elevate right across. So I was saying to myself, how can this tile floor that was here not be actually level with the rest of the house?
It was a pink tile floor.
Yeah, and pink cabinets, like, you know, like not pink, but you know, an older color, you know what I mean? That, not pink, I don't know what they were. They, you know, it was,
All
so,
right, so where do we
so
go
we
from
did
here?
try, so.
Well, I think I don't know if anyone else has any other question here or comment. I think, you know, we've been at it about an hour. I think we probably, if everybody's comfortable, vote your conscience, do what you think is right, and we'll see where this falls out. And everybody goes from there. Shall we take a vote? What we need is a motion, if everybody's ready, we're determining whether the building should be preferentially preserved. A yes vote is yes, it should be held. No vote is no. So can somebody make that motion?
So moved.
Seconded by Annie? Okay, so the motion on the floor is to determine whether 36 East Main Street should be declared or determined as preferentially preserved. I'll go roll call vote by last name. I guess I'll do it in, well, no, I'm going to do it the way I always do it. So that is going to be Annie,
Yes.
Jim,
Nay.
Grant,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
and Miller is no. So that's 3 yes and 2 no. So it is therefore at the moment preferentially preserved. And I must say, John and Kelly, for what it's worth, I don't know if we've ever had, at least since I've been on here, a split vote on this. And so it really reflects, that we are
The thought and everything that's going into it, I agree.
trying to be thoughtful about this and trying to also, everybody sticks to their principles. And this is why I admire this group so much and really respect them. And so, that said, of course, we don't, all we can do is delay. And so officially, I will record, tomorrow with the building commissioner's office that's our determination. That said, the bylaw does allow for a revisiting of the matter, based on the circumstances. So, I don't know if the 3 yeses would be amenable to reconsider. It's a matter of if you've got new information or maybe numbers that, hard numbers, or the consult from a preservation-minded architect that's going to say, we can't do it. I can't speak for what, the rest of the commission, what might move them. But I would tell you that as chair, I'm willing to bring any new information that you have back in front of this commission, and just as we did tonight, we'll take it very seriously and give you all consideration. And I know it's a disappointing outcome for you, but I couldn't, I can't be more complimentary to how you guys have handled it and how gracious you've been. So that's very, very much appreciated. And I know it's going to cause you some inconvenience, but maybe a little time, might be beneficial. So let's see these things, I hope work out for the best.
We were disappointed we even had to come to this meeting to have this discussion, because we were hoping for a different outcome as well.
Yeah,
No, I
appreciate that. It's not, and I know that you've operated from the start in good faith, and know that the commission's determination to hold the building now is done in the same spirit, and we're, we definitely feel for the homeowner, but also guided by, I think, this feeling that, forever is forever, and we don't want to get it wrong. But
let me ask a question, if I may, just for our internal notes and maybe for some subsequent discussion, if we bring this up again within this holding period. Would you be willing, and I imagine that we could probably find it on public record, but would you be willing to disclose the sale price that you used to purchase it, what your purchase price was, and to the nearest 50,000, how much you've had to put into it so far for exploring the renovation, in terms of internal demolitions?
Holding it for 1 year, you paid a year in taxes. That's $13,000. Insurance, another $3,000. To clean the place out was another couple grand. Cut down a tree in the front, $1,000. Chip some, stumps in the front, another $1,000.
How about the purchase price? Were you willing to disclose it?
It was 500,000.
500,000.
500 was okay.
500,000. Yep.
Mhm.
And then to gut the place was, I think it was 13, 12, 5, something like right around there.
Yeah, thank you.
I
We
will say
paid some
that,
money for some architects to come over and look, just for them to come and see. We started with a historical architect in Hopkinton.
Another
That
$2,000.
was another $2,000 for her to come over. Then we asked another architect from another right in town who does some remodeling for historical homes, and they as well said, we had to pay them. That was
John and Kelly,
Again, that's
okay.
That's fine.
We wanted we were trying to do diligence.
That was on us our first
We
year.
were excited to see what we could do. I mean, like I said, I went up to a kitchen place to have it remodeled with a farmhouse looking kitchen, country, bring some of that character back into it. And then as things were coming down, things were falling apart.
Well, can I say, John and Kelly, that possibly, what always helps us and makes us feel better, I know, about the decisions are the sort of hard facts. And so, for instance, if you had a preservation-minded architect in and, you know, at some expense, I know. You know, can that, you know, can you document that for us, or, you know, send us the, you know what I mean? That if people, you know that that's been kind of looked at and could see a report.
I understand what you're saying, but now that's going to cost me even more money.
I-
Right? Because no one's going to do it for free.
Right. Appreciated and
Well,
respected.
I-
I understand. And it's not easy and
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know, I can just put it out there that that
We-
may be the kind of thing that, you know, and I'm trying
Trust
to,
me, we've tried,
Yeah.
and you know, unfortunately, it is what it is. You know, so
We've
Given the
even had a
back-
realtor come in that lives in town saying, look into this to say what they could do and what they would think if we put this kind of money into, what would be the, you know, the value of this house, considering where the house is, how it's situated, where it's
and
located.
it was
There is.
slapping paint on and doing things that just it
Well,
would probably make it look worse.
yeah, can I just, and I don't want to put my fellow commission members on the spot in any way, shape or form, but if you have, any of you have a suggestion, for the applicant, you know, feel free before we move on.
I was gonna ask one question related to the end game. If you stay however long it takes to demolish and rebuild, do you have a target square footage roughly of the house you want to build there?
I mean, our house right here is around 3,400 square feet. So
Right, no bigger than that. No,
it would probably be around that.
Yeah.
You know, we're not talking
we're not looking,
8,000 square feet.
you know,
We're not.
we're not looking to maximize the space. We love the land. We love the entrance, like coming into the driveway. I thought, you know, we were planning on removing the driveway that cuts in front of our living room.
And that's one thing, like at our house
You
here,
know, that,
we were unfortunate, like, we can't see who pulls in our driveway. So over there, we would have, you could see someone coming in. No one uses our front door. Everyone
comes in through
comes
our,
into our backyard, or they come, you know, we see them, they call us, and we raise up the garage. Over there, you'd see someone coming in, it'd be great.
As it should be.
right, as it should be, right, you know, and we don't have any windows on this side of the house because, you know, it would have been right, his car, I mean, their cars were coming in and out.
So there's no windows on our side of the house because that house is so close.
So we were thinking as a
And-
family with little kids that we had here, who would want a car to cut in front of their house every day? So we're saying, we had plans to make it so that everybody, not just, you know, if we had to sell this house or not hold on to it, everybody would be benefiting from the situation.
And our idea would be to pull the house forward a little bit, and even then,
You'd still have,
you could cut windows into this house and it would look, you know, you wouldn't have a car coming at you. It would be, you know, could put up some nice bushes, just like a regular neighbor.
like a regular neighbor.
So I have one question for you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm not looking for you to incur any more expense, but do you have a copy of the historic architect from Hopkinton? Do you have a report from them?
Don't have a report, no. It was a walkthrough.
It was a walkthrough and we
And-
did discussion.
And she said it would be at least $800,000. And I was like,
And she said, do you want us to go forward with the plan, with the discussion?
I
And
said, let's
so we
hold
just-
off. I
we
walked
paid
through
for her to come over.
several people.
Was that Thompson Architect?
I think it was.
It was.
Yeah.
And she was wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying, but her, I mean, what she said, what had to be done.
The gentleman that designed our house was from Milford.
Mhm.
Stone?
I can't even think of it.
But we called him
We
first
called him first.
and he said, I'm too busy. Try this
Try her,
person in,
'cause She does
Hopkinton."
historical homes.
Yeah.
And she
Well-
might have a great insight into that. So we
Yeah,
reached out.
she could tell you
She came
with
through.
our ideas. At the end, she said, I hope you have at least 800,000, probably cost you more. I'm like,
Well, I would say, John and Kelly, as little as I hate to, you know, tell anybody to spend any more money, in the grand scheme of things, when we're talking about, you know, $500,000 plus, whichever way you go, of course, if you tear down tomorrow and build from scratch, you can decide, it may be the investment of a couple $100 to get some sort of summary report that might help the commission, whether that's worth it to you or not. I'll leave it to you to decide, but I'm very grateful for you coming. I appreciate it. It's not
Thank
easy
you.
for anybody, but thank you so much. You're great. I'm happy to have you as neighbors in Southborough, and keep in touch, and we'll
Great.
see
Take care.
how we go.
Have a good
forward.
night.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
coming in.
All right. Have a great night. Thank you for having us tonight.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Bye-bye.
And let's see if I got that. I just got to, okay, move. Sorry about that. Just trying to, there we go. All right. Thank you. Listen, gang, I somehow find a split vote and the vigorous discussion, it's exhausting, but also really healthy and good, I think, and I think it speaks, I really do think it sort of speaks to our, independence of thought. And so those are always really difficult, but thank you, everybody. So now we'll sort of try to get into high gear and move through all the rest of the stuff we've got. Any further thoughts on that stuff before we go on? I think, and again, I wanted to make it clear to the applicant that there are these three avenues. We can release, we can hold for 9 months, and there's a third way if there's information that you find material that would change the vote. And so I just wanted them to know that that was at least within the realm of possibility. Make sense?
Yeah, and that's why I asked what the target square footage is, because you could project with new construction. Annie could probably do that better than anybody. Project with new construction at 3,400 square feet would be worth in that location. And then
it's a very tough situation. I mean, it's one of those ones where, to me, if the applicant had bought the subject house, subdivided the parcel, and then said, I want to demolish, I would have no sympathy, quite frankly. But this is a whole different, for me, a different sort of ball of wax. So it's really tough. But again, thank you.
Kevin,
So next, yeah.
I was just wondering, would it be okay to take like a 3-minute recess or something before heading on to the next? Just a kind
Sure.
of
Shall we do that?
seconded.
I would love that.
Okay, yeah, 2 minutes. I'm sorry that took so long. I'll try to move through the rest of it. But
Okay,
yeah,
thank
3
you.
minutes. Okay. We are back in session now at 8:37, and moving on to item 5 in the agenda. And this regards 21 Highland Street, which is the South Union School. The select board met on last Tuesday on September 5th and had a fairly vigorous discussion. I think it was billed as sort of preliminary on 21 Highland, but pursuant to that Shopsy subcommittee report on the school, there's movement now to kind of figure out what to do. And I was contacted by Dorian Jasinski, the chair of Shopsy, proposing a joint meeting, a kind of roundtable meeting, and she wants us to be in person, which I think is a good idea, between Shopsy and all basically stakeholders with concerns about or interest or some kind of rooting interest in the future, the fate of South Union School. So Dorian Jasinski's proposal was that we sit down with Shopsy, the Historical Commission, of course, Southborough, what is it? Southborough Housing Opportunity Partnership Committee. Got that right, didn't I, Grant?
Right.
Shopsy, the Historical Commission, the Open Space Preservation Commission, which is chaired by Freddie Gillespie, and the Recreation Commission, which is chaired by Jen Hansen, whose rec is located in South Union. What I told Dorian was that I thought that was an excellent idea and that I was in support of it. And I think I think there was initially, to be honest, some reluctance. The select board, I'm not sure, was initially altogether happy about the idea. But I hope they've come around to that, to the notion that I think this is what boards and commissions and committees in town are supposed to do, is to pay attention to what's going on around us, and be proactive when we see that it is a matter that concerns us. And so I told Ms. Jasinski that I supported the idea and that I would bring it to you tonight. Her proposal was for a meeting on Wednesday, October 18th at 7 p.m. Place to be determined, but in person, maybe at the public safety building, possibly at the townhouse. I think probably that public safety, the meeting room of the public safety building is the logical candidate. And we can set up, and the four concerned commissions, boards can meet and just talk about where we're at and what we think and what we'd like to see in that school. During the select board meeting last Tuesday, there's talk that ranges, and it's consistent with the SHOPC report, or the subcommittee report, varied from renovating and restoring it. There's talk about it as housing, possibly affordable housing, possibly continued use as town offices. There was Jill Palmer, who had worked on the subcommittee, was at the select board meeting the other night and suggested a swimming pool. Michelle, I believe you were there, so you heard that, I think, on a seasonal basis, which I thought was a grand idea. I hadn't heard it before, but there are a lot of options for the building. And, it is, as you know, one of only two individually listed National Register of Historic Places properties in town, the other one being the JDC Bradley House at 5 Sadie Hut Lane, which is a private home. So we have a big interest in this. So the question then is, A, do you think, as I do, that this is a good idea to sit down and just see where we're all at and what we might suggest or want, or just to listen to what other people have to say about the property? And B, if you do think it's a good idea, can you make a Wednesday, October 18th at 7 p.m. meeting? Any comment on this, pro or con?
I think it's a great idea. Unfortunately, I can't be there, Kevin. I'll be in New Hampshire for work.
Okay.
I'm definitely in favor of this gathering, of the impacted commissions, and I am available if that ends up being the date.
Okay, great. Yeah, I understand that SHOPC already has a quorum having agreed to this date. And I had a hand, I did talk to Dorian on the phone about this, and we kind of, I had said to her that I thought that Wednesdays, I can't do, for instance, in the fall, Tuesdays or Thursdays, and Wednesdays are actually the best day of the week for me. So she was trying to meet my but I didn't know where everyone else was. Grant, are you in or out on this? Do you like the idea?
I do like the idea very much. I think it's a very important topic. I won't get too much in. I made a public comment at the meeting, the select board meeting the other day, and I think there were some concerning statements that were made. So I'm glad to see that there's movement on this. I'll get to it later in my CPC update, but the CPC is interested in this as well. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. And you said it was October 18th, right?
Yes.
I believe I'm free then. Yeah.
Good. Jim, are you in on this?
I would love to hear about it, especially at a summary level where it's kind of netted out to here's the differing points of view. Unfortunately, the 18th, I'm in Europe, not back until the 19th. The Wednesday following would work, but I don't want to impact everybody else's schedule.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I mean, I don't know if that changes the calculus. If Michelle and Jim can't make it, then we won't have a quorum. Although
Was it a voting, is it a voting session or is it just an information session?
No, it's really just I conceived of, and I think it's important to say that we would go in listening, talking, but I think I could make it clear to Dorian that if we want to stay on that date, that we're not going to be taking any official position, obviously, because we won't have a quorum. So that's okay. I'll throw in another wrinkle, and I think I could fairly mention this because it's material to this, is that I hope by October 18th, I said, that we may have another member, because we do have an application in, and that is from Mr. Dan Blanchard, who did yeoman work, was on the initial incarnation of the St. Mark Street Park Working Group, but also has done the sort of yeoman work, collecting all those pottery fragments and things that are now in my possession, and waiting a new home, one hopes, with the Historical Society at some point. So if he is confirmed, I guess, by the select board at their next meeting, I believe on the 19th, next Tuesday, we may have quorum after all.
Would it be a Zoom? Could I Zoom in?
Well, it's possible we could do a Zoom component. Like I said, Dorian wants to have the meeting in person. I think that's a good idea to actually lay eyes on people, but I will inquire. So you could make a Zoom.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, that's good to know. And I would suspect, that room is capable of that. I think with the owl, it requires a certain extra finesse, but might be useful. I will say also that even since the meeting last Tuesday, my understanding is that there's been a little bit of a movement by the select board to rethink any pro-demolition thoughts. And I do know that they're considering having a kind of listening forum, so that their own forum to collect input on this. And we would certainly be willing and eager to participate in that as well if the select board does it. And I think they're going to. So there's a lot in flux right now, ultimately, Michelle, Grant, Jim, Annie. So let's see how this plays out. But I'll get back to Dorian and I'll say, yes, with the caveat that our quorum issue is in question, and I will inquire about the Zoom. Fair enough, and I'll keep you posted.
Kevin, just
Yeah.
one quick thing. Would it be useful? I don't know if this would complicate things. Would it be useful to propose alternative dates that we would have a quorum, just to put them out to say we would be available also on X, Y, and Z, or would that just be too?
Yeah, we could do that. It's it's the whole thing with this balancing 4 different groups and trying to find a night that everybody can do it. I would be amenable to the Wednesday before, the Wednesday after, for instance, would be the 11th or the 25th. Is that change any? Jim, you're going to be in Europe, right? Like maybe the 25th. How if I propose the 25th, how would that work for people?
It works for me, I believe.
Not for Michelle, though, right?
It does not, but that's okay.
Okay. Jim, would the 25th work for you, just as an alternate?
Unfortunately, no. I'm actually home for only a week, and then I'm off to Europe again.
Well. All right.
I hope pleasure.
Then I'll just stick on the 18th with Dorian, and again, we may have Dan, which would be great because then we'd have quorum, and maybe Michelle remotely, and we'll take good notes for Jim. And again, it's really a kind of talking, listening to each other sort of session. So I think it can work either way. Great. Chair's report. I'm gonna go through these as quick as I can. First of all, the business of the plaque for Revolutionary War veterans at the old burial ground. You know, this is something that cautiously I felt I had to move on very quickly. You know, I as I emailed you when I emailed the select board about this, there was outreach from this gentleman, Joseph Gautier, who's from the Massachusetts Sons of the American Revolution. It's MASAR is their acronym. And, you know, he does all kinds of stuff for them. He's a state Eagle Scout chair and chairs the ROTC and JROTC and Sea Cadets committees. And, you know, anyway, one of the things he does is run this program that was his own invention, apparently, to place these very nice bronze plaques to commemorate Revolutionary War soldiers buried principally. They have some at sites that are not formal burial grounds, but they tend to be at, you know, old town cemeteries kinds of things. And he's gotten a lot of encouragement, apparently good reception, not only locally, but from the national umbrella group of the Sons of the American Revolution for this program. And he has the autonomy and the funding to do it fairly quickly, and reached out to me to ask if we were interested, that it was the Historical Commission interested in such a plaque. He had been contacted. It turned out, I believe, by Dan Calenda, but he didn't remember who it was at the time I spoke to him. And said, are you interested in this? And of course, the penny dropped because, you know, in the earlier in the last spring or in the early summer, when, you know, all this flag stuff in the old burial ground was going on, and there was this talk about, you know, how to commemorate Revolutionary War veterans, particularly the question of unmarked graves and all that stuff. And there was a proposed committee that sort of died on the vine. And anyway, this to me was a brilliant godsend way to sort of do right over there, do something very handsome and historically accurate and comprehensive. And we've got Sally already working on, you know, there was kind of a confluence of a lot of things. Sally Waters, you know, doing the work for us, researching the Revolutionary War veterans in the OBG. And it was pursuant to stuff that came up during the whole flag OBG discussions some months before, first Al Hamilton's flag proposal, and then the chair, Andrew Dennington's proposal that finally passed. And, you know, I just thought, wow, perfect. So I wanted to act on this very quickly before basically we got bumped further down into the line, because he's done a number of communities at this point and is really trying to expand this. So they've done, at this point, Gloucester, I believe, was first. They've done one in Hudson, Marlborough, North Harwich, Wellesley, Scituate. I just got an email from him today that they've received the plaque they're putting up in Wellesley. So, you know, it was a fast going thing and I wanted to jump on it right away. So that's why I sort of simultaneously brought this to your attention and to the select board's attention. And subsequently, I was invited to that select board meeting that was last week to, you know, they said, can you come pitch this thing? We think it's a great idea. Please come. So I did, and spoke, and Michelle was there and Grant was on the call. And this has since been, I think it was today, was it? Did you see there was a piece, Beth Malo and My Southborough did a nice, totally unexpected, but very nice little piece on this little story that the plaque has been proposed. The select board, I presented to them and explained the whole thing and what we thought it would do, or what I thought it would do. And there are two plaques already in the old burial ground. One is a small one at the base of the flagpole that lists the names and dates of the 3 Revolutionary War veterans who died during the war. One was poisoned and the other 2 died at Valley Forge. And none of them are buried actually in the OBG. And then there's a larger plaque on a embedded in a rock about 10 feet in front of the flagpole that simply notes that the tablet was erected in 1995 in memory of members of early generations of town who were buried in graves marked and unmarked between 1727, when the cemetery was consecrated, and 1895, when the last interment was made there. So it's sort of a generic kind of marker. So this would cover a lot of the issues that, again, came up months ago in various discussions. So I was very much in favor of it. I presented it, and they voted 5-0. The good news is to accept what is going to be free to the town and to have this thing put up and to put us in charge of it. So we are. And one of the nice things that I think I mentioned in the select board presentation is that when Joe Gautier, who runs this thing, said that there are local chapters like within the state, and the one that covers Southborough and this area is very active in terms of reenactments and stuff. And so, as they did in Marlborough, he expects that when we dedicate this thing, they'll show up like in full dress and fire the muskets and do the whole. It's a very kind of really nice ceremony. And there had been a piece in the Community Advocate covering the Marlborough dedication, which was just a year ago. And it's really nice. This plaque in Marlborough is in that central burial ground that's right next to, just off Main Street, next to it used to be the old junior senior high school. It's now the town library. So it's a very prominent location, and it's a very attractive plaque, bronze, not that dissimilar to what we're putting up for the entry points to the National Register District. So it'll be consistent, both with those plaques and the plaques that already exist in the OBG. And I imagine it going right near the front, kind of the gate, that wooden gate into the burial ground. But here's where we're at on this. Sally is hard at work trying to get us the most accurate numbers of who the Revolutionary War veterans are in marked graves and who are there in unmarked graves. And my goal is to present to Mr. Gautier a very comprehensive list of both, and to figure out with him how we can have such a plaque denote both. And Sally has warned me here, this is really interesting actually, is that she says there's going to be a lot of names, because unlike a bunch of these other towns that have a whole bunch of cemeteries where actually Revolutionary War veterans are somewhat scattered around, in Southborough the OBG was it, and so they're quite concentrated. And so, for instance, the Marlborough plaque only has 24 names. The Gloucester plaque, I believe I counted the most, has 38. Sally, at last count, had 59 for ours, 25 in marked graves and 34 in unmarked. And I spoke to her about it again today, and she indicated that number is creeping up. So it's going to take a certain amount of creativity to figure out how we're going to accomplish this. But I can tell you that Mr. Gautier is a really forthcoming, very responsive and engaged. I mean, he really believes in the cause kind of thing. And so I think we're going to get a good result out of this, and it's going to be such a, a nice win for us as a group. And I think building, mending some bridges or fences or whatever you want to call it with maybe some of the veterans groups. And to that end, when we get the information, I need to reach out, and I'll do it before, but I want to reach out. I've indicated to the select board, to Mr. Wynot, the Veterans Graves Officer, to Mr. Stearns, who's the veterans agent, I believe is the right term for him in town, as well as, Mr. Wynot, of course, represents one of the VSOs in town, and I believe Mr. Kalenda the other. And I want to make sure that their input is heard on this. But Sally indicated she's going to need more time to get accurate information, and that she wants to bring it in front of us for us to vet, because she did indicate that there are a couple names that she has some questions about. whether they should or should not be included. So my thought is possibly as early as October, but maybe November, that we all come together. We've got Sally, and we try to get certainly Mr. Wynot, perhaps Mr. Stearns, Mr. Kalenda, if he can make it, and kind of just make sure everybody's good with the list. And we can discuss placement and some of the niceties of that afterwards. But production time, as you know, takes months with these bronze signs. So the quicker we get this in the pipeline, the better with accurate information. But before we send it off, the nice thing is that Mr. Gautier seems like he's a kind of autonomous figure and can act swiftly once we have good information. Does that all make sense? It's a really nice thing for us, I think, Yeah, Grant.
Yeah, that's great news. Really encouraging, I think. Just a quick, I guess, process question. So I think it would be important to have the correct, obviously have the correct names, correct number of names. And I guess my only concern about what you said in terms of that kind of timeline is, I know that the whole issue of the unmarked breed has been kind of an evolving thing over the last 20 years when the ground penetrating radar study was done in 2005. And so, what if we make a plaque and then we discover a couple more in a month or, a month afterwards? Like, would there be any way to add them or something? Or like what happens then? Or just go get a new plaque, or just have it be accurate? Because I know it's just a weird problem to have, but just not having it all.
It's possibly, of course, and there's been some discussion about a new ground penetrating radar survey, but there's no ground penetrating radar survey, new, old, or otherwise, it's going to tell you who it is under there. So the compilation of the names really has to be done entirely on the documentary evidence, which is what Sally is working pretty assiduously on, as I understand it. And but we're going to have to vet it, and this is why I want to have Mr. Wynot look it over and give his thought, or Mr. Stern or Mr. Stearns, or hopefully both. And if there's anybody else that you think or they think needs to review this, because we don't want to make a mistake, for sure.
But other than that, I think it's great news. I just, in terms of timeline, I think it's really up to Sally to.
Right.
If it takes her 6 months to do it, then it's better to have her give it to us in February or something, to make sure it's 100%.
Yeah, for sure. This is something that we're not going to be able to rush. When the information's ready, it's ready, and when it's right, it's right. Because we have to be. It's not like the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, where you can engrave in the stone another name. This is a cast bronze product, and there's no way to, outside of a piece of masking tape, you can't add another name once the thing is done. So so stay tuned. There's not much else to say about that. Next thing I had is Town Common Historic Assets Inquiry. Now, I believe I did talk about this right at our last meeting, Grant. I kind of let you know, and I sent this. I stop me if this doesn't sound familiar, but I had told you that I had. Our last meeting was the 27th of July, right? Because we didn't meet in August. I'd had an inquiry from Kathy Cook on the select board with regard to a sign that I wouldn't have to give you the whole big story, but there used to be something called the James W. Burke Square. We have these square signs. They're typically to veterans, various places around town. There used to be one down at basically the eastern end of the common, further off from the All Wars Memorial, if you imagine there's one extra little triangle there before you get to the library kind of thing at the base of Common Street. There was a James W. Burke Square sign that was there before the sidewalk project, but not thereafter. And the question was, where was it? What happened to it? And so I started digging into the matter of the Common, because I already had a bug in my bonnet over the missing cast iron Common Street signs. I think I'd shown you this or commented on it. There were two of them, quite beautiful, dated roughly from about 1930. Again, cast iron with black lettering, one at the eastern end of Common Street or one at the western end of Common Street. Common Street takes off and rejoins Main and sweeps up and around the Common. So the Burke sign was gone. It was removed during the sidewalk project and not replaced. The Common Street signs were removed during the sidewalk project and not replaced. An added unpleasant wrinkle to this was that the Common Street, which was marked at the western end where there's that milestone in the little plaza, if you can imagine, at the western end of Common Street where it rejoins Main. Common Street was rechristened with a modern sign that says St. Mark's Street, which is completely incorrect. Not only did the GIS and the historic maps show Common Street as Common Street, and unless the townhouse has a new address at 17 St. Mark's Street, the sign is wrong. But also even the plans for the sidewalk project maps show Common Street as Common Street. So this is a kind of an egregious error. Also, I was, documenting the condition of the granite pipe and iron fencing that runs around. There's granite posts 10 feet on center, surmounted by cast iron pipe with these sort of loops that hold it into the granite, that, if you can imagine, I can bring this up, but goes all the way around the Common. And actually, it'd be a lot easier, and I could do this a lot quicker if I screen share a moment and give you what I have as a little slideshow of the common issues. This is the missing James W. Burke Square sign. You can tell, do you see the old light stanchion in the background? That's the Route 30, Route 85, Main Street, Corderville Road, Marlborough Road intersection with the old light stanchions. So you get a sense of that's where that sign was. Basically, the library is beyond here. Then this is one of the missing, that's the missing Common Street sign at the western end. It was broken, and my understanding was it was DPW took possession of it and is holding it. Where it is exactly, I don't know. This is the Common Street sign at the eastern end, shown in a Google Street View shot under construction, and it's right there in the center. These can be, of course, restored beautifully and replaced, and I think should be. There's the bogus St. Mark's Street sign that's wholly inaccurate. The Common Street sign was on the other side where the nearest telephone pole you see is, but that's got to be corrected. I mean, this is completely wrong. And there's the map, the GIS map, demonstrating to you where Common Street actually begins and ends. This is typical of the condition of the fence, which it's a terrible kind of shame, really. There's another section that's just the out and out public safety hazard. These were taken just a week or two ago. Nothing's changed. This is the last artifact I mentioned when I was kind of cataloging these issues for Ms. Cook. This is the Southborough stone boundary marker. And this is an asset actually across the street from the common that was near the intersection of Main and Corderville Road. It sat basically near 34 Main and 1 Corderville, like where the 1 Corderville is that town-owned house, kind of a pink color. So right there, that was removed also during the work. And it's inventoried in the Macris. And it's also referenced in the National Register listing for the Southborough Center Historic District. My understanding was that it was taken for safekeeping by the DPW. And never replaced. And so there are this sort of series of historic assets that in the process of the work on the sidewalk project were taken away and never put back, you know? And so I was, you know, quite disturbed by this. I was further disturbed, and I hat tip to Michelle Hokinson on our illustrious commission, who pointed out that these things appear in the reports. I'm going to go back 1 second because you're going to find this really interesting. If I go back to the screen share for a second, and let's see if I can get to this. Got to close that out. On the Main Street reconstruction. Oh, here we go. This is on the town website. Let me point out to you what's in the specs and apparently what we paid for. Repair and replace pipe and granite post railing. Wasn't done. Another one of these, and this is right on the town website. Another ones have, if I can get this to move, I always have a hard time moving the map. Oh, there. Restore and reset item. Well, that's the Common Street sign at the western end. There's also, if I can move the map a little bit more, you'll see it's listed as part of the spec. I can't get it to move. I'm sorry, but I assure you, friends, that so is the sign that Ms. Cook contacted me about in the first place, which was the James W. Burke Square sign. She sent me a photo of the family of James W. Burke, the extended family, visiting Southborough and having their photograph taken in front of this sign. So it's a little bit of a crime to have the thing disappear, and it's on the specs that it was due to be removed and replaced. So I'm sorry, I can't get the map to move. The point of that is not to filibuster and make a big kerfuffle here, but this is stuff that was in the plans and that presumably was paid for by state or local funds and that we didn't get. So, you know, I bring it to, you know, I brought it to Ms. Cook's attention, and I think she's going to work with, you know, we have a brand new DPW head. He's a great guy. I think he's wonderful. And, you know, he's still getting up to speed, and he's got a lot of issues to sort out, but I hope to keep just chatting with, you know, my friends in the select board and, you know, and other places to try to get some movement on this, because we got to make this right. These are, you know, the boundary marker, the 2 Common Street signs, and the James W. Burke sign, and the appalling condition of that historic granite and a pipe fence. Those are 5 things, you know, bought and paid for, and important assets cataloged in the Macris and listed in the state and in the National Register database that have just evaporated. So, you know, we got to do something about it. And that's now I'll say that the next item I have on the here. Oh, I skipped over it actually. The thing I skipped over was review of conditions in the old burial ground. Let me go back to that because I can tie this together very quickly. On Sunday, just this past Sunday, I met Andrew Dennington at the old burial ground, and Andrew has been very kind in listening to me complain many times as part of the St. Mark Street Park Working Group about conditions in the OBG. So we met on Sunday and spent about 45 minutes walking the old burial ground. While I had him there, now I'm back to Chair's Report item C, I also discussed with him the same stuff I just laid out to you and that I had previously emailed Ms. Cook about, that we've got real problems at the town common with stuff that I think that we paid for. The fixing of the fence, that I don't want to spend any more money. I don't want to go rattling the tin cup to CPC or anybody else when we've already paid for it, apparently. I want that Burke sign back. I'd like to see the Common Street signs back. I certainly don't want to see Common Street renamed St. Mark Street. I want the fence fixed. I want the boundary stone. So I went over all that stuff with Andrew, and he was obviously concerned and listened with care, and that was great. So we're trying to do something, get something going there. I mean, this is all going to be a slow, difficult process, and a lot of it has to do with I'm sort of the besieged but extremely capable Mr. Cundiff, taking on all these kind of projects and trying to figure out where the hell some of this stuff went. So there's that. So back to I'll go back now, just back up. And again, I'm sorry I messed up the order of this. When Andrew and I then went to the old burial ground, we went over all of it. We talked about the stone wall. We talked about the headstones. I pointed out to him headstones that were knocked over, headstones that were broken, headstones that were broken and had been repaired and now have broken again, or that are at risk of being broken again. We talked about the trees and the need for a comprehensive trimming program and an evaluation for potential replanting. I had indicated to him that my understanding was that DPW was very loath to trim in there at all, at the risk, because they didn't want to risk damaging headstones, when ironically, of course, not trimming risks damaging headstones by dead branches falling. So we talked about the trees, we talked about the fencing, we talked about the guy wire that runs from a pole that was approved for removal by the select board 9 or more months, I believe it was last fall, near the flag school. And there's a guy wire that runs almost 100 feet from, or more than that, from the pole to a tree on the library side of the property, and the need to get that removed. We discussed that some of those plots have like family plot sort of setups where there were granite posts, and then there used to be iron rail all the way around, and they're missing. One is in very poor condition, and they're missing in 2 or 3 others. We looked at the granite posts that are actually fractured so bad that if you wanted to set a murder mystery in the old burial ground, you would have the miscreant pick up a piece of these granite posts that in some cases just sit there on top of a post, like a big piece of granite, and you'd have your miscreant bash someone's skull in. In other words, quite dangerous. So there are all kinds of the fact that you can barely operate you can't really operate the gate unless you're strong and can pick it up and move it, and that the iron rod that holds it in to the post is detaching. So we went over pretty carefully a long list of things that I'm concerned with. I know you're concerned with, and Jim is, I know this annoys Jim because we don't have the direct agency, but I do think I'm very appreciative of Andrew as select board chair coming out on a Sunday to walk through this and hear what we've got to say about it, or what I had to say on your behalf. And I think, I don't know where Jim, like, it's going to go in the direct run, but I think getting it in front of members of the select board is going to pay some dividends. But I don't know, and part of the reason I wanted to bring this to all of you was, so I'm beating the drum on the town common, which I think is essential to get fixed. I consider it an eyesore at present. And I also think the OBG is desperately, one thing I noticed when I was looking up or researching and going like to the Marlborough Cemetery, their town center, to look at this Revolutionary War plaque, the one they got from Massar. I was really profoundly impressed with what good shape that Marlborough Cemetery is in. The headstones are all pristine. Everything, the fencing that goes around, they have a variant of what we have. Granite post every 10 or 12 feet, and they have a double iron pipe going between them in impeccable condition. It's actually, it looks like a newer install. But I think to myself, if Marlborough can do it, why can't we? So both in the OBG and in the common, I'm trying to make noise for us. And what I'm telling you is I've gotten a very friendly reception from members of the select board, and I'm very, very appreciative. But I don't know if you have any suggestions about what else I should be doing or we should be doing, because Jim is right that we don't have any agency directly. It has to be a kind of bully pulpit and a certain amount of negotiating and prevailing upon the kindness and the good spirits of people like Kathy Cook and Andrew Dennington, and I'm sure the rest of them. I know Marguerite Landry is very concerned, and I'm sure Sam and Al Hamilton are as well. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, so I think one place that we could start is, I think, especially regarding the signs, is to really, I think, figure out if the sign, especially the common street sign, if it exists, if it's broken, if one's broken, if the other isn't, that kind of thing. Because I think that would be a good place to start in terms of figuring out, does it need to be replaced, or does it literally just need to be put up? That kind of thing. Because if it's in town possession, just somewhere in a back room or something like that, then I think that's much easier to just kind of, as you were saying, keep pushing and pushing until they finally go out and get their guys to install it or something.
Well, the one common street sign I know is broken. I was told it was in possession of DPW, and if they can't weld it, we can find someone that can. Part of the reason, and Michelle had sort of tipped me to the business with the fencing, is because I had started researching companies to do that kind of repair. And they exist. There's a very good company, I believe they're in East Boston, or no, maybe in Southie, that did all the work, for instance, on the cast iron fencing around the public garden in Boston. So,
yeah,
really, really high quality work. And that's kind of, I think, what we're going to need in Southborough to get it done. But, the shocking thing was to see that maybe it's already been paid for. And
Sure.
It should have been done. So, we have to, and that's not I'm not pointing any fingers at all. I wouldn't know who to point to, but I just think that, I'll keep talking, and let's keep this as an issue, because again, I think, I know Kathy and Andrew and the rest of the select board, I know they care about this. My God, they live here too, so I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I just meant, if it's already in the inventory, then it's a simpler fix than to go get new funding and
right. Well, that's
the
it.
select board to spend $10,000 or something. Whereas
I have to reach back out.
You might have to do as well, but just at this point, that would be a good maybe fact-finding mission to find out like what exists, what can be used, what should be, what that kind of thing.
I have to reach out back out to Mr. Cundiff, and I've been reluctant because I don't want to. The guy again has got a lot on his plate right now. There's more on that coming. So, anyway, among the things he has on the plate is the next thing I have is the installation of the Southborough Center Historic District signage. That's still hanging fire. Again, we have remaining in the ARPA allocation $4,230.16. That's money that I would hope we could return to the kitty. But if it's needed for installation, we do have it. And so I hope to get an answer. I had hoped I'd have it for you tonight. I don't. I'm going to try to get an answer because we obviously really want to get those signs up. We do have an issue with regard to the installation of the signs. The placement, and some of these we've been over. The one that would be at the park, I've talked to the working group. Everyone knows where that's going to go. I do need to reach out to the golf course committee because one of them could conceivably go by one of their tees, which I think they would actually like. There's one near Fay. I've already talked to Diane Byrne, the assistant head of school there, about it. She's on board. There's one on DCR land, or would be, this is all town public right of way, but it abuts DCR land. Michelle has already talked to the abutter on School Street.
Yes.
I've talked to it's a neighbor of mine on Lattisquama. And the only one I think we have that's really hanging is, and it would have to be in consultation with Mr. Cundiff, the one at the railroad crossing, whether it goes in the Knights of Columbus right-of-way property, that's at 2 East Main, or whether it goes before the tracks on the property, that vacant lot that's currently owned by Peter Bemis, I believe. So there are a couple little wrinkles to be worked out there, which we'll get to, but it's mostly whether DPW is going to be able to do it or not, or whether we have to outsource it. Quickly on demolition delay updates. 5 Corderville Road is up on October 5th, expected to be gone. My understanding is that the developer has been in front of Conservation Commission. I watched that meeting actually when they were presenting. And I believe they had to go still in front of Board of Health. I don't know if they've done that with regard to the septic, because they want some alteration. And it's quite limited because there's wetlands, both in front of the property, actually across the street and behind them, and all kinds of issues. But I think, that's 3 weeks from now. And I think time's up. There's nothing I don't think there's anything, we have nothing we can do. Obviously, we've done all we did. We voted it preferentially preserved, and it drifted sideways from there. So, but I just wanted to update you. With regard to 42 Main Street, the Doc Stone House, I did talk to Diane Byrne just, I think 2 days ago, assistant head of school there, and who's been my contact. She indicated that they may have some financial figures actually by the end of this week, that they're still working on the project. There are still a number of different uses that they're considering, and the outcome is still undetermined. But again, I remain hopeful. They did paint the building, of course, this summer. It's now white rather than red, and the consensus seems to be that people like it. It certainly looks much better. And so I thank them for that. They painted it, cleaned up the property, trimmed bushes and whatnot, and it looks good. And it was painted white because it's consistent with the rest of their holdings on Main Street. So I'm still quite hopeful, but that's all I can tell you. Members reports. Michelle, anything going on with Pilot that we need to know about?
So we have yet to meet for the summer just because of people's schedules. There is a meeting scheduled for the 20th of September, and we actually have a new member. His name is Frank Tipton, and he I guess is a school teacher at a private school somewhere, not in Southborough.
Okay. Thank you. That was nice and succinct and better than I ever do. Grant, what have you got on CPC, if anything?
Yeah, mine will hopefully be succinct, but definitely won't be as succinct as Michelle's. So CPC, I think we met twice since historical last met. And I'll just talk about our more recent meeting. Oh, actually, I think we only met once since, yeah, sorry about that. So previously I had mentioned that we voted to approve a slate roof for the townhouse. So I believe that's moving ahead. The bid documents went out. So at our most recent meeting, CPC put out a call for applications for people who wanted to, applications for CPA funds. And that deadline was August 31st. My understanding is that the deadline is kind of loose, but that just to kind of get people to apply, that was what they had done. So we received 3 applications. The first was from the golf course committee to use CPA funds. And so I should clarify this, at this point in the process, it was just CPC was just kind of vetting to see if they would qualify and meet the state requirements to actually be eligible to receive these funds if it was to go forward to town meeting. So we received 3 applications. One was from the golf course committee to install a new irrigation system at Southboro's golf course. I have limited information about all of these, but my understanding is that the current system, or they claim that the current system is old and outdated, and so it would just be replacing that essentially. We received a second application from the Trails Committee for CPA funds to be used on the Peninsula Trail, which opened up recently. So I think to build a new section of that to kind of, I don't know if it would be the final phase or kind of the next phase of that trail project. So that was the second application we received. And then the third application, even though I have very little detail on it, I thought you might find interesting. There was an application by the owner of, I believe it's 26 Boston Road. I could have the address wrong, but it's by Falcone Gas and Oil there on Boston Road, right near the intersection. It's that kind of painted red brick house with kind of white painted numbers, I think, on it, which is quite old, I believe. But so there was an application to use CPA funds to, I believe it was just a structural restoration to make it, not like interior restoration or anything like that, but just to, that was the application to restore that building somewhat, which apparently is in pretty bad shape. I think there was a couple fires and stuff like that. So, but again, I have limited information, but so one of the applications was for historic preservation purposes. So that's just interesting. And also interestingly,
Grant, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I think you're talking about, it's 21 Boston Road.
Okay. That could be-
Yeah. I next to Falcone's, right? The red.
I just look it up real quick.
Right, an extension. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yes, 21. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's an interesting building. Okay. Yeah.
And I can share. Actually, I'll just share my screen real quick if that's all right. Just to show you which house it is or which building. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. And again, so at this point in the process, we have very limited information. So what happens next is we will invite the different applicants to come in and give kind of a presentation about why they think they should deserve CPA funds and that kind of thing. So that's kind of the next step. interestingly, the Ben Smith, our chair, said that the requests for the total cost of the 3 requests is likely going to be more than the available funds that the CPC has, which apparently is the first time in the Southborough CPC's history that would be the case. So we might have to, it's unclear at this point, but there might have to be some determination made about which CPC wants to go forward. So that's just something to note. Let's see, what else? The other item I want to talk about relates to what Kevin was talking about earlier, was regarding South Union School, 21 Highland. So I believe I mentioned at our last meeting that we had a meeting with John Parent previously, in which we kind of discussed a lot of the status of the building. And so at that previous meeting, a couple months ago now, I think, CPC had decided to write a letter to the selectmen kind of detailing our position on the building. And so at this most recent meeting, just because my sense is that the issue was kind of raised in prominence in the last couple of weeks with the select board meeting, and I think there was some activity online about it, Facebook and stuff like that, that it seemed to be getting some more attention. And so essentially, the CPC thought that it might be best for each of the relevant commissions. So in this case, I think that would be historical, recreation, open space, perhaps planning, because of the whole MBTA communities thing, has maybe an interest in the overlay district, but to kind of write their own letters on the topic, if they so chose. And so essentially, CPC is trying to get a sense of what historical's concerns or position on the building is. In order for them to kind of form their opinion, they would want me as the representative to kind of summarize what historical's, if we have a view on the topic, to convey that, and then that would later go into a CPC's own letter. So I just thought I would mention that. And well, yes, essentially they encouraged all the different committees to send their own letter if they so choose.
Well, to kind of grease this, I mean, and I would say that our position, and we haven't really discussed this in detail, but that building to me is in good condition, viable, obviously historic, obviously quite beautiful, and again, given its historic importance, I can't imagine our position would be anything other than we'd want to save it. Is there any dissent on that? I mean, not to simplify the whole thing, but sure. Like to me, this is such an easy one that our position is and should be that it has to. I said I was asked the question when I spoke about this, because again, last week when I was there, I ended up speaking on this matter as well. And Al Hamilton was asking me a question about available funds. And I said, I wasn't particularly expert at all on all the various sources of funding for this building, but I did know that there's that cycle of grants that comes through the Mass Historical Commission, and it's fairly substantial money. But the one caveat is you got to put a PR on the building, a preservation restriction. And I said, you ready to do that? In other words, make a commitment up front that we're not even going to consider, because they fund, for instance, studies, but you have to agree as a kind of prior, condition that you're going to put a preservation restriction on it and then explore what you can do with it. So I said, well, that's the one that I know about. And it was I was kind of nudging hey, let's just get on with it and, you know, commit to saving it, and then figuring out how to do it and how to fund it. And, you know, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
But we're, you know, I mean, I just find it a little funny that we're in Southborough, we're kind of on a fast track right now to build an $80 million, that will be $100 million school, that may or may not be needed, and that none of your kids are ever going to get to use, because they'll be grown up by the time they would go to it. And then they may not be able to afford to live in this town because the taxes will be so high that, you know, this gold-plated school that no one can afford. But that we could think, and, you know, we're on the fast track to that, having spent $1 million for a study, and, you know, this whole, but we can't find the relatively small change it would take to, you know, save South Union, which is this, ironically, a school that's this vital historic asset, would be a kind of, I don't think it's going to go that route. I think everybody already has gotten the message that this is a valuable thing, and people I know in that part of town feel very, very, very strongly about it. So I would say that I don't know what the timing is on this request from CPC and letters, you know, and all this stuff, but I would kind of be in favor of waiting until we have this roundtable conversation, and also seeing if the select board does in fact decide to hold a listening session, or to include other boards and committees and solicit our input before we act, you know, because I have a feeling that organically, I'm hoping there's going to be some movement and some sense of conversation and consensus, without necessarily having to draft a formal letter at this point. But I'm open if you guys feel strongly that you want to kind of come up with a statement. But I'm in favor of sort of waiting on that a little bit.
As I've kind of indicated in the past, I think when you have a clear path towards a decision, or, you know, who's making the choices and control, that's the time to act, as opposed if it's in formulation like it seems now. It's early.
Yeah, I actually think it's kind of early. And I think there was some, Jim, there was a little bit of misunderstanding even by some members of the public. It's quite understandable that when the first things they hear, like at a select board meeting, is, oh, there's talk, and I think the sort of train, that can happen, that the train has left the station. And I actually think the conversation is much more preliminary, but, you know, it's all good, because actually some of the public feedback that has been quite vigorous helps the select board either evaluate or reevaluate their own positions. So yeah, I think if it's okay, I think we can wait. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I just wanted to convey that to you. I think Recreation Commission, because it directly impacts their,
Right.
you know, because they are in that building. I think they had written a letter. CPC had drafted a letter that was kind of detailing the investment that they haven't sent it yet, but that the investment that the town had made through CPA funds to preserve the building previously, going back to 2005. And so I think they are going to include maybe a bit about each of the concerns that they have, and probably talk about the historic section. So I might contribute to that.
Yeah, please do.
CPC.
I think, you know, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I've already made it very clear to members of the select board what my position is about it. I think I felt comfortable in saying that I think, you know, my fellow historical commission members are pretty unanimous on the idea that this building, you know, merits our consideration. So, all right, well, we'll see. And, you know, we'll know more once I get back to the Shopsy chair and just say where we're at with regard to this thing on the 18th, you know.
By the way, I wanted to make mention, I miscalculated on my travel. One of my calendar entries was wrong, so I am back on the 18th. That's the
Oh,
one,
great.
that's the one Wednesday in October I have back.
Oh, great, Mr. World Traveler. Good for you. Thank you. All right. Well, that's going to help, Jim. Thanks. So here where we're at is Grant, again, did reconstructed the meeting minutes of the 27th, July 27th, and I got the hectoring notice actually today from the clerk's office that we're overdue. And we would have gotten to this earlier had we not had to postpone the meeting, the mix up with the building department, all this stuff. Anyway, but I didn't. So Grant sent them out at like 6 or something, and unfortunately, I was eating dinner, and I didn't. I didn't
Sorry
get
about that.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to review these. I know Jim, you looked at them. Annie, have you had a look?
I did, yeah, right before our meeting.
Did you have anything you want to?
No changes for me.
Jim, you were good.
I'm good, yeah.
Michelle, did you have a chance to look at these?
I did not have a chance to look at them.
Now, how can we handle? I mean, we could post them as draft minutes and hold the approval to next time, or
Could we
if-
read through first of all, I just wanted to apologize for the late hour in which I got it out. That's my bad.
Look
I
at
think we could, if we wanted to, hang on for a couple minutes. They're not that long. It's like 3 pages, I think. If you want to read through them real quick.
I will do that. So
yeah, Michelle, maybe if you want to do that, I can cover the other stuff that I've got 2 other quick things. I'll move on to and just talk. I actually have 2 quick items other business, believe it or not. I never do, but I do tonight. I'll make them really fast. One is I want to acknowledge that I was contacted by a former resident of Southborough, who's Mark Burling, who now lives in New Hampshire, but said he lived here with his family from 1957 to 1977. And he wrote to me a few weeks ago in an email and said he had in his possession a kind of yearbook, believe it or not, from the Peters High School, turns out from 1951, and that he was given this document by a former teacher in the year 1954. 1954, 69 years ago, if my math is still functional. And it's called the Peters Piper. And it arrived in the mail. He said, "Would you like this thing? I think the Historical Commission should have it." And I said, "Please." So Mr. Mark Burling sent me this thing, and it's crazy because what it is this kind of thing that the high school, the former Peters, and there were junior high, like 7th and 8th graders in the building too, that were in this building, and they put together this thing. It's all stuff written by kids, and it's all historical. It's like not your typical kind of yearbook. It's like these little essays done by the students, and documenting various historic facts about Southborough. And any of you want to see this sometime, we'll have to figure out what to do with it. It goes to my thing about I want some storage space just for us. I mean, we can turn this over to the society too, but I think some of this stuff we should hold. Questions like, do you remember when the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad that runs through Southborough Center used to have 12 trains a day? I don't. Do you remember when they tore down the railroad station? I don't, but I can imagine. It brings a tear to my eye. This is a fascinating document. And one of the interesting things is you go through the names of the people who were the contributors, hence the students involved. They're all very common names to Southborough. I mean, even I have been here long enough to recognize these names. A couple of these people, there's actually one person listening here whose grave I walk by on a regular basis. I recognized her. So it's fascinating. I just wanted to publicly get out that I did to thank, and I did, of course, by email, but to thank Mr. Burling for sending this along. It's absolutely fascinating. The other thing was that I was contacted a day or two ago by our DPW head, Bill Cundiff, with a question for me about, in fact, the rural cemetery, and to wit, the old water tower. I don't know if you're familiar with this or actually even what it was, but there's a beautiful, like 2-story rubble stone tower in the old burial ground. It's one of the beautiful distinctive features of our, not old burial ground, I'm sorry, of the rural cemetery. It's listed in the narrative report in the Macris database and in the National Register account for the Southborough Center Historic District. What that building was, it's now just used for storage, I think, if they use it at all. But it was actually a water tower, and it was built in 1903. And do you know what it was? The reason it was built, this is described in some of the state documentation, was to irrigate the rural cemetery in the summer when the grass would, go brown, lack of water. And they actually had, Southborough had windmills all over the place in those days to pump water. And the rural cemetery had a windmill that pumped groundwater up to the tank inside the stone tower. And then it would, by gravity feed, be used to irrigate the cemetery during the summer months when it was, browning up. Anyway, that building, which I have myself photographed and find quite lovely, has an appalling 3-tab asphalt shingle, black, worn out 20 years ago, but somehow still there roof. And Mr. Cundiff, like I said, our wonderful new DPW head, who's quite enterprising fellow, wants to get to it and replace it and fix it. And so he reached out to me to ask if the Historical Commission had jurisdiction over the rural cemetery and what I thought about this water tower roof. And I replied that we don't have jurisdiction over the rural cemetery, but I was very, very grateful for his outreach, because that is a historic asset in a cemetery that's an important contributing property to our National Register district. And so again, I told them how much I appreciated the outreach. And I had some thoughts. And the thoughts were, since 3-tab asphalt shingles were only invented in 1903, as it happens, the year the tower was built, I thought it was very unlikely that the roof had originally been asphalt shingles, but probably cedar shakes, possibly slate, possibly some other material, but my hunch was cedar shakes. And then I said, it would be nice to see it done in cedar shakes. In my dreams, it's a copper roof. That's never going to happen. Maybe slate. But at the very least, could we think about a more dimensional architectural, like a timberline kind of shingle that would add some dimension and character to what's an unbelievably beautiful tower. And I said, I don't offhand, I don't know about any photographs of that building, but I'll contact the folks at the Historical Society and see if they know anything. And so I did. I talked to Sally and I talked to Michael Wyson, and they both indicated that they don't think there are any photos of that building going back, let's say, to the 20s or 30s or whatever, unfortunately. So I'm going to get back to Mr. Cundiff and tell him that, but reiterate my suggestion about an upgrade. But I just wanted to let you know that that's cooking. And again, it gives you some sense that I think we've got a really good DPW head here who's going to be responsive to the concerns of historical, which is why, incidentally, I'm optimistic about things, for instance, in the town common. Although it's going to take some time to locate and sort of undo some earlier mistakes.
That's really interesting, Kevin. I've always liked that building. I had no idea that it was a water tower. So that's,
I think hardly anybody does, Grant. And actually,
Yeah.
I was going to say, and
I've always wondered, what was it, why is it there? What is it for?
Right, we can't really have substantive discussion because I didn't get it on the agenda because it's only come
Oh,
up yesterday.
yeah.
But I will say, I think it's fair to say that I think we should have a discussion about this tower a little bit further down the road, because I would love to find a way to mark it and to explain to someone who goes through the cemetery, maybe by a small plaque or a small brush, what the hell that is, because I don't think anybody knows what that was. That it's not just an architectural folly, that actually it has a story to tell about how Southborough used to do things,
Oh.
So I think it's a really cool, I think that's an opportunity down the road. So I will put it back on an agenda for us maybe to take this up and kick it around just for 5 minutes and see if we can do anything. Michelle, any thoughts on the going back to the minutes of July 27th? Anything?
There's nothing. I think that it looks good.
Well, I would expect no less from Mr. Farrington.
Thank you.
Would it be okay? I would be happy to take the say-so of you three on this. Sorry about that. Or if can we?
I move to accept the minutes as written, and Kevin, if you want to abstain, then that takes care of the problem.
Let's do it that way, and I think that's fair. Because I
Need a
would
second.
yeah. Somebody second that?
I did.
Okay. So Jim made the motion. Annie seconded to approve meeting minutes of July 27th. Roll call vote. Jim,
Aye.
Annie,
Yes.
Grant,
Aye.
Michelle,
I
and Miller abstains. So 401. Minutes approved. Thank you so much, Grant.
Grant.
Aye. It's a little challenging without the recording, but made it happen.
Well, that didn't happen tonight. Hopefully will never happen again. So
Excellent, even considering, especially considering.
yeah. So it looks like we'll be good with a quorum, and maybe with Michelle on Zoom on the 18th for this thing on South Union. So to schedule another meeting, and I know, unfortunately the 18th is about a month from now. So I would suggest, I know Jim said you won't be around Wednesday, the 25th. How about Monday, the 23rd? Does that work for anybody? October 23rd? Does that work for you, Jim? Or are you away?
I'm just checking the itinerary here. I'm away 21st through the 7th.
To November 7th.
Yeah, and I'll be +5, so it'll be a little late to join on Zoom, but do it without me if you want to.
And you're also away earlier in October, right?
That's right.
So maybe we should just schedule and around Jim in October, because he's got this big
Back-to-back trips, really.
he's on the grand tour, much to all of our disgusting envy. But Grant, how's Monday the 23rd for you?
That works for me.
Good. Well, let's do it. Let's say Monday the 23rd for our next meeting. And we're going to have this joint meeting on the 18th, so we can kind of do the debrief on the 23rd. And we may, fingers crossed, have again a sixth member, so that'll be nice. And I think that'll work. All right. There's no one here, so there can't be any public comment. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jim, seconded by Annie. The motion is to adjourn. Roll call vote. Jim,
Aye.
Annie,
Yes.
Grant,
Aye.
Michelle,
Yes.
Miller is an emphatic aye. Thank you so much. I think that the the hearing was the really exhausting part, but I think a good thing, you know. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, everyone. Good
Good
night.
Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
Kevin, I'll send you some screw ideas.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, take care.